Brazil, land of majestic forests, land of endless beaches, land of samba and passion. A vast, breathing expanse of green. An endless coastline where the ocean kisses golden sands. Thriving metropolises where millions of lives intertwine. Welcome to Brazil. Welcome to the land where dreams come with a soundtrack. The fifth largest country in the world defies imagination with its vastness. From the northernmost point to the southern extremity, the distance is the same that separates London from Cairo. A territory almost larger than the entire continental Europe. So vast that it embraces 4 different time zones. And in this immensity, every region tells a different story. Our journey begins with water. For 7,500 kilometers, the Atlantic Ocean kisses paradisiacal coasts that seem to have emerged from a dream. For example, the beaches of Fernando de Noronha, the golden dunes of Jericoacoara, the natural pools of Porto de Galinhas. But water in Brazil is not just the sea. In the interior, where Mount Roraima rises like a flat-topped giant at the border with Venezuela and Guyana, lie the mountains of the Serra do Tepequém, from which the Cotingo River originates, a tributary of the majestic Rio Branco, which flows south until it joins the Rio Negro. But it's further west in the Peruvian altitudes of the Andes that the true king of these lands is born, the Amazon River. For 6,992 kilometers, this water titan crosses the continent like a pulsating vein, reaching widths of 50 kilometers during the rains. A colossus that alone carries almost more water than all 10 of the world's largest rivers combined, guarding 12% of the planet's fresh water. It was precisely this abundance of water that attracted the first Portuguese colonizers, who, starting in 1500, began spreading Portuguese across the continent, leaving their language as a legacy and making Brazil the only country on the continent to speak this language. But the true wealth of this land is not just in its natural resources, it's in its people. Like the Amazon River that collects waters from 1,000 tributaries, Brazil has welcomed people from every corner of the world. Here lives the largest Japanese community outside Japan. Here, indigenous, African, Portuguese, Italian, German, and Arab cultures merge. And in the depths of the forest, 305 indigenous peoples keep 274 different languages alive, each with its own sacred connection to nature. Moreover, this fusion of cultures explodes in Carnival, originally introduced by European colonizers as a festivity linked to Lent. Today, the Rio Carnival has become the biggest show in the world, where millions of visitors pour into the streets to witness the parade of samba schools. The gigantic allegorical floats tell stories of this land of contrasts, where music and freedom redefine Brazilian identity each year. Speaking of passion, however, nothing unites the 215 million Brazilians like soccer. If Carnival is the country's biggest party, soccer is its true religion. 5 FIFA World Cups, more than any other nation, have consecrated this land as the Temple of Jogo Bonito. Pelé, Zico, Romario, Ronaldo, Neymar, more than champions, they have become symbols of a people who transform every match into a celebration of life. And it's this same vital energy that has propelled Brazil among the 10 largest economies in the world. For 150 years, the country has dominated the global coffee market, also exporting soybeans, sugar, iron, and oil. But as a reflection of its economy and continental dimensions, Brazil contains opposite worlds. There are ultra-modern metropolises like São Paulo that rise next to the favelas, in a contrast that tells of dreams and challenges, of wealth and inequality. However, it's in cuisine that all these contradictions dissolve. Every dish is a chapter of Brazilian history. Feijoada, for example, with its black bean and meat stew, tells the story of the encounter between Africa and Portugal. Or the pão de queijo, that reminds of ingenuity and tradition. Or even açaí, which brings the mysterious energy of the Amazon into modern cities. And churrasco, with its endless grills, celebrates the festive spirit of the South, where the pampas fade into the horizon. This is Brazil, a country where nature and culture merge, and where every road can lead to a new adventure. And it's precisely from this adventure that our journey through the most extraordinary places in Brazil begins. Amazon rainforest. A green ocean extends as far as the eye can see, full of life in every layer, crossing 9 South American countries, but finding its beating heart in Brazil. The Amazon rainforest is not just the lung of the planet, but a vertical universe where each level hosts a unique ecosystem. From the humus-rich soil to the treetops that brush 50 meters in height, life manifests in surprising forms. The song of birds mingles with the roar of jaguars, while swarms of multicolored butterflies dance among the sunbeams that filter through the leaves. Here, the Amazon River flows like a vital artery, feeding a network of tributaries and Igapó, which are periodically flooded forests. During the rainy season, entire ecosystems transform, with fish swimming among the submerged canopies of trees, while the pink dolphins of the Amazon explore new flooded territories. Here, every raindrop feeds a millennial cycle of life and death, in a perfect balance that resists time. This forest is not just an ecosystem, rather it is a living book that tells the story of the evolution of life on Earth. It's a treasure of biodiversity that continues to reveal new secrets to those who have the courage to explore its depths. São Paulo. In the heart of Brazil rises a metropolis that never sleeps. São Paulo, the most populous city in Latin America, pulses with the energy of over 12 million inhabitants. The streets extend in a vast grid, with skyscrapers dominating the horizon, and create an urban panorama that competes with the world's major metropolises. The Paulistanos move through neighborhoods that tell different stories. Avenida Paulista, for example, represents the financial center, while in the Liberdade district lives the largest Japanese community outside Japan. In the municipal markets, meanwhile, vendors offer fruits from the Amazon next to specialties brought by immigrants who have shaped the identity of the city. The city's museums guard international artistic treasures, while urban parks offer refuge from the concrete. Ibirapuera, for example, with its artificial lakes, or Villa-Lobos, with spaces for concerts. In this metropolis, Brazilian culture meets the world and creates something completely new, a city that constantly builds the future. Iguazu Falls. On the border between Brazil and Argentina, the waters of the Iguazu create a spectacle that divides the sky from the earth. The river splits into 275 waterfalls, creating a water system that dominates the rainforest. Water plunges from basalt walls formed 120 million years ago during the separation of the supercontinent Gondwana. The culminating point is at the Devil's Throat, where water falls for 82 meters in a vortex of steam that rises toward the sky. These falls create a unique ecosystem where about 2,000 species of plants and 400 species of birds live, with toucans flying through the mist of water, while koalas climb among the rocks in search of food. The roar of water resonates in the forest like a primordial beat, telling stories of past geological eras. During floods, moreover, 12,750 cubic meters of water per second precipitate into the void, transforming the landscape into a boundless aquatic world. Lençóis Maranhenses. In northern Brazil, the desert meets water, creating a paradox of nature. White sand dunes extend for 1,500 square kilometers, interspersed with crystal-clear freshwater lagoons. The rains fill the spaces between the dunes from January to July, creating thousands of natural pools that reflect the sky. The wind continuously shapes the landscape, moving up to 30 meters of sand per year, and during the dry season, the landscape transforms into a sea of sand, with water remaining trapped beneath the surface. At the edges of this humid desert, mangrove forests and tropical vegetation create a green barrier, where biodiversity explodes, demonstrating once again the extraordinary ability of nature to create complex ecosystems in extreme conditions. Rio de Janeiro. Nestled between granite mountains that emerge from the Atlantic, Rio de Janeiro explodes to the rhythm of samba between sea and forest. Christ the Redeemer, from the height of Corcovado, embraces a city where nature and man have created a unique symphony. The beaches of Copacabana and Ipanema pulse with life from first dawn to last sunset, while the Tijuca Forest, which is the largest urban forest in the world, wraps the neighborhoods in a green embrace. At sunset, when the sun tinges Sugarloaf Mountain with gold, the city transforms into a mix of lights and shadows, revealing why the Cariocas call it Cidade Maravilhosa. Every alley in Rio tells a story of resilience and joy. Every square is a stage where life is celebrated, with an intensity that infects anyone who visits it. And in this corner of paradise between sea and mountain, you understand that Rio is not just a city, but a state of mind that changes anyone who visits it. Fernando de Noronha. About 350 kilometers from the Brazilian coast, a volcanic archipelago emerges from the Atlantic like an outpost of nature. Fernando de Noronha consists of 21 islands, where sea turtles choose the beaches to lay their eggs, while spinner dolphins transform the bays into natural amphitheaters. The main island rises from the sea with basalt walls, and Morro do Pico, a natural tower of 321 meters, guides sailors like a primitive lighthouse. The Dolphin Bay hosts the largest population of resident dolphins in the world. These cetaceans return every day, like an ancient ritual as old as the ocean itself. Beneath the surface, nurse sharks rest on sandy bottoms, while schools of tropical fish dance around coral formations. Restrictions on the number of visitors have preserved this ecosystem, transforming the archipelago into one of the last marine paradises on the planet. Pantanal. The largest wetland in the world, transforms with the rhythm of the seasons. During the rains, an inland sea submerges a territory as vast as France, creating a unique ecosystem where water dictates the rules of life. In the dry season, the landscape changes. The water retreats into a labyrinth of lakes and channels, where fauna concentrates in a spectacle of survival. Jaguars, larger here than in any other part of South America, patrol the riverbanks. Their density is the highest on the planet, with an adult male controlling up to 80 square kilometers of territory. Alligators, meanwhile, crowd in the remaining pools, while 5-meter anacondas silently glide in the water. Scarlet ibises, jabiru storks, and hyacinth macaws, which are the largest parrots in the world, fill the air with their calls. This natural sanctuary demonstrates how biodiversity thrives when nature maintains control. It's one of the last places where the rhythm of life still follows the ancient rules of the seasons. Gramado. At 850 meters altitude on Saragossa, lies a city that transports visitors to a corner of Europe right in the middle of South America. Gramado preserves the heritage of German and Italian settlers who established themselves in the region at the beginning of the 20th century. Bavarian-style houses with sloped roofs and wooden facades line the streets of the center. During winter, when temperatures drop to 0 degrees, the city transforms into a destination for those seeking an unusual experience in the tropical country, with the Christmas Light Festival illuminating the city for 2 months with light shows. The local gastronomy, moreover, reflects this European influence. While the Black Lake, surrounded by pines imported from Germany's Black Forest, offers a panorama that contrasts with the traditional image of Brazil. In Noor Park, finally, monumental sequoias planted by settlers create a unique microclimate, where morning fog envelops the hiking trails that connect this city to nearby Canela. Brasília. The federal capital represents a unique urban experiment in the world, built in just 4 years in the middle of the Central Plateau. Seen from above, the city reveals the shape of an airplane, with government buildings aligned along the monumental axis that forms the fuselage. The National Congress, with its twin domes, marks the center of power, while the Metropolitan Cathedral rises from the ground like a crown of concrete and glass. The architects designed the city as something futuristic, eliminating traditional intersections in favor of roundabouts, and separating residential zones from commercial areas. The inhabitants indeed move between superquadras, which are residential blocks surrounded by cerrado vegetation. Moreover, Lake Paranoa, artificially created, surrounds the city, providing humidity to the dry climate of the plateau. During the dry season indeed, Brasília's sky transforms into a canvas for sunsets that illuminate the monuments with red light. Chapada Diamantina, in the heart of Brazil, time has sculpted tabular mountains and underground waterfalls. Chapada Diamantina hides caves where water shines with an impossible blue. Rivers flow over beds of black crystal, while waterfalls plunge into pools hidden in the forest. The Morro do Pai Inácio rises solitary in the plain, witness to an era when diamond seekers wandered these lands. Orchids grow on rock walls, clinging to microscopic cracks in the stone. Pico das Almas, meanwhile, rises into the clouds and rare plants survive in the thin mountain air. Here, wind and time have shaped the landscape for millions of years, creating one of Brazil's most unique ecosystems. Arraial do Cabo in Búzios. On Rio de Janeiro's coast, there are two coastal towns separated by 25 kilometers of shoreline and emerge as witnesses to the meeting of Atlantic Ocean currents. Here, the cold waters from Antarctica mix with tropical waters, creating a marine environment where 500 species of fish find refuge among the underwater rock formations. The phenomenon of upwelling, which is an oceanic process in which winds push nutrient-rich deep waters to the surface, feeds a food chain that includes sea turtles, dolphins, and whales that migrate along the coast. Moreover, the beaches of these two peninsulas tell a geological story that began 130 million years ago, when South America separated from Africa, with the wind continuously shaping the coastal dunes. Here we find bromeliads, which are tropical plants similar to wild pineapples, and cacti that cling to the sand, creating microhabitats for lizards and seabirds. Finally, Arraial do Cabo hosts the best diving sites in Brazil, while Búzios distinguishes itself with its 23 beautiful beaches distributed along the entire peninsula. Salvador de Bahia. The first capital of Brazil develops on two levels. In Pelourinho, which is the historic center, the stone streets have about 500 years of history. Baroque churches, with their gold-covered interiors, testify to the wealth of the colonial era, while colorful houses narrate the daily life of those who have always inhabited these alleys. The African influence, however, is felt everywhere. Markets are fragrant with traditional dishes, while in the squares performances of capoeira take place, an ancient martial art transformed into dance. Religious rituals mix Catholic and African traditions, creating a spirituality unique in the world. The upper city and lower city are connected by an elevator built in the 1920s called Elevador Lacerda, which has become the symbol of Salvador. From here, the panorama embraces the Bay of All Saints, where fishing boats dot the water, as in the times of the first colonizers. Ilha Grande. This island extends for 193 square kilometers, with a Mata Atlantica covering mountains that reach 982 meters above sea level. In the heart of this forest, 63 streams descend from the heights, creating a freshwater network that feeds the island's life. Tree roots retain the soil, allowing the survival of 15 primate species that move among the canopies. Marine life, meanwhile, thrives in the waters around the island, with 150 species of fish finding refuge among rock formations. During the night, fireflies illuminate the forest, while fishing owls hunt in the lagoon waters. The absence of roads, moreover, has preserved indigenous trails that cross the island connecting 34 beaches. Florianópolis. On the island of Santa Catarina, Florianópolis unites 42 beaches in a mosaic of ecosystems where mangroves and coastal dunes alternate with Atlantic forest. The Hercílio Luz Bridge, built in 1926, connects the island to the mainland with an 821-meter steel structure, while the Conceição Lagoon occupies the center of the island. In the historic center, Portuguese colonial buildings tell 500 years of history, with a public market that continues to function as a meeting point for traders and residents. The dunes of Joaquina, meanwhile, move with the southern wind, creating a landscape in continuous transformation where sand hides fossil shells from 5,000 years ago. Here, finally, surfing represents more than a sport, with waves that attract enthusiasts from around the world, transforming beaches like Joaquina and Mole into arenas for international competitions. Chapada dos Veadeiros. In the center of Brazil lies a landscape that dates back over 1 billion years. Chapada dos Veadeiros occupies a territory of 65,000 hectares in the state of Goiás, where quartz rock formations create a panorama that seems to belong to another planet. Visitors travel paths that wind between canyons carved by millennia of erosion. Water, meanwhile, flows everywhere in this national park, forming over 120 waterfalls. The Almecigas waterfall, for example, plunges from a dizzying height, creating clouds of vapor, while the Dos Curos waterfall extends in a series of natural steps that form perfect pools for bathing. The biodiversity of the Cerrado, which is the Brazilian savanna, finds here one of its last refuges, with plants that grow nowhere else in the world, maned wolves and giant armadillos that move among the vegetation. This place certainly represents Brazilian nature in its purest form. Fortaleza. A city with 34 kilometers of coastline on the Atlantic Ocean. The capital of Ceará emerges as a meeting point between the sea and the Sertão, the semi-arid region of the interior. In Iracema Beach, with its waterfront protected by breakwaters, has transformed a fishing village into a vibrant urban center. The Central Market, the beating heart of the city, offers an authentic experience among colorful stalls of local crafts, while the historic center preserves elegant colonial buildings that tell the commercial history of the region. The Metropolitan Cathedral, meanwhile, with its neoclassical architecture and stained glass windows that tell the story of Christianity in Brazil, can accommodate up to 5,000 faithful on feast days. The tropical climate, finally, with average temperatures of 27 degrees Celsius, is mitigated by the constant ocean breeze that favors the typical vegetation, visible in urban parks and along the beaches. Paraty. A historic and colonial city, witness to 500 years of Brazilian history. The historic center preserves 400 buildings from the colonial period with an ingenious hydraulic system from the 18th century. The cobblestone streets indeed are built slightly below sea level and are periodically flooded by high tide, creating a natural urban cleaning mechanism that still works today as designed centuries ago. Moreover, The sea forms a bay with 65 islands, while the forest reaches the city limits, channeling the ocean's humidity. In the evenings, the center comes alive with small traditional taverns, where you can taste local dishes, accompanied by the notes of traditional music that spread along the streets illuminated by lanterns. Ouro Preto. In the mountains of Minas Gerais, the city develops on hills where gold shaped the history of colonial Brazil. There are 13 Baroque churches built with the wealth extracted from 300 gold mines, with facades that incorporate soapstone, the same used to create the statue of Christ the Redeemer in Rio de Janeiro. The streets, meanwhile, follow the contours of the mountains, creating a labyrinth of stairs and alleys that intertwine. And during the rains, the roofs of houses direct water toward underground cisterns, keeping alive an ancient water system. Finally, vegetation clings to the surrounding metalliferous hills, where plants have adapted to soils rich in minerals. Jericoacoara. Among the dunes of northern Brazil hides a fishing village transformed into a surfer's paradise. Jericoacoara emerges from the sand like an oasis, where roads don't exist and the alleys are made of sand. A giant dune dominates the landscape, called the Pôr do Sol. It's the meeting point at sunset when the sun dives into the ocean, creating the spectacle of the green ray. Freshwater lagoons appear between the dunes like mirrors of the sky, while kite surfers balance on the water, pushed by the constant wind. The sea, moreover, has carved arches in the rock, creating natural windows on the ocean, where sea turtles come to lay their eggs. Manaus. At the point where the Rio Negro meets the Amazon, rises a metropolis surrounded by the largest forest on the planet. Manaus, capital of the state of Amazonas, is like an urban island in the green sea of the Amazon, which extends in all directions. During the golden age of rubber, at the end of the 19th century, the city attracted wealth from Europe. The Amazon Theater, indeed, with its colorful dome, testifies to that period of opulence, when the local elite imported materials from Paris to build an opera house in the middle of the forest. The city's floating port adapts to water levels that vary up to 15 meters between dry and rainy seasons, allowing ships to dock year-round and bring goods and people to villages that have no land connections. Moreover, the meeting of the waters represents a unique natural phenomenon, where the dark-colored Rio Negro flows side by side with the lighter-toned Rio Solimões without mixing for kilometers. Recife and Olinda. On the coast of Pernambuco, Recife and Olinda develop among mangroves and coral reefs that have protected the coastline for 400 years. Recife, the Brazilian Venice, develops on 3 islands connected by bridges that cross rivers and canals, while Olinda climbs hills that dominate the coastal landscape. Founded by the Portuguese and temporarily occupied by the Dutch in the 17th century, Recife shows this dual influence in the architecture of the historic center. Marco Zero, the main square facing the sea, represents the geographical reference point of the city. During Carnival, this square transforms into an epicenter of celebrations, where Frevo, a local musical style, invites participants to dance through the streets. On a nearby hill, Olinda preserves Baroque churches and colonial monasteries, recognized by UNESCO as World Heritage. Colorful houses face the sea, while the giant masks of the local carnival, the bonecos, are prepared all year round in the artisans' workshops. Between these two cities, mangroves form a unique ecosystem where the fresh water of rivers mixes with the ocean, creating a labyrinth of channels that local fishermen navigate with traditional boats. Itaimbezinho Canyon. The The Itaimbezinho Canyon, with its rocky walls that rise majestically almost 700 meters, is one of the most impressive natural spectacles in Brazil. The canyon winds through Aparatos da Serra National Park, offering spectacular views of vertiginous waterfalls that plunge into the deep valleys below. Well-marked hiking trails allow visitors to explore the wild beauty of the canyon among lush forests and viewpoints that offer incredible views. The fresh air and the sound of flowing water create a tranquil atmosphere, making this place a perfect destination for nature and adventure lovers. Belo Horizonte. In the Serra do Curral, this city was one of the first planned cities in Brazil and integrates parks and gardens that cover 18 million square meters, creating true green corridors. These spaces not only improve the aesthetics of the city, but also provide environmental benefits such as regulation of urban temperature, improvement of air quality, and conservation of biodiversity. Mangabeira's Park, for example, extends at the foot of the mountains with natural springs that feed streams. Lake Pampulha, meanwhile, forms an artificial ecosystem with fish and herons that fish among the water lilies. The Church of St. Francis of Assisi, finally on the lakeshore, represents one of Oscar Niemeyer's masterpieces, with its parabolic structure that challenged the architectural conventions of the time. Concluding this visual journey through Brazil, we have moved from the rhythm of its metropolises to the most remote landscapes, discovering together not only places, but also curiosities that make every corner of this country unique. We hope that the images and stories told have enriched your knowledge and stimulated the desire to personally explore the varied beauty of this nation.